Shalom, brother. Shalom. Today, I just wanted to go over the image of quote unquote Satan, of the devil. That's been popularized due to, media, television, things along those lines, and how it's very disparate from the image of quote unquote Satan of the Bible. In fact, for those of you brothers who don't know, the conventional image that we see of Satan is really the pagan gods of old, that being Baal or Molech, Zeus, whatever you want to call that entity. Uh, Amon of the ancient Egyptians as well. And the reason you can tell this is, well, two things I'm going to focus on: the image of the horns, which represent power and might, as well as the image of the trident in the Satan's hand, which actually, for those of you brothers who don't know, the trident is the image that really represents the lightning bolt, because of the way lightning splits. When it strikes, it kind of forms the image of the trident. So really, what we call Satan is just another image of a Zeus or Baal or a Horus, whatever type of a sky god or entity of fire or sun god that you want to think of. Just want to read this quick excerpt and then I'll get to my point. Now, when the Israelites turned their backs from worshiping the Lord, they adopted the worship of the pagan gods from their neighbors, and they too were led by pagan high priests to sacrifice human beings. They joined themselves also unto Baal Peor and ate the sacrifices of the dead. Thus they provoked the Lord to anger with their inventions, and the plague brake in upon them, and they served their idols which were a snare unto them. Yea, they sacrificed their sons and their daughters unto devils, and shed innocent blood, even the blood of their son and their daughters, whom they sacrificed unto the idols of Canaan, and the land was polluted with their blood. Now, this is just an excerpt from the scriptures, detailing how the Israelites would worship the pagan gods, and they would do that in the form of ritualistic child sacrifice. Now, we know in this society, this also exists today in the form of abortion. Of course, they don't outright tell the people that's why the reason it exists, but that's exactly what the reason it exists is for. The difference between this society and the ancient world is not in terms of practices, because all the ancient practices and the worship of the pagan gods and the rites and the rituals are the same. The only difference is they cloak it, they hide it. They don't want the average person to understand what's truly going on. But let me continue. The ignorant Israelites were not sacrificing their children to gods, as they thought, unto devils. Paul, over 1,000 years later, said the sacrifices of the Gentiles, which the Israelites adopted, were actually sacrifices to devils. But I say that the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to devils, and not to the Most High. And I will not that ye should have fellowship with devils. Continue on. This is the main point I want to get to. Oh, 1 second. As history has documented, the greatest object in pagan worship was the sun, who was symbolized all over the world as the heavenly bull, not only as a bull, but as well as a serpent. For those of you brothers who watched my previous video going into the concept of Lucifer, I kind of delved into the concept of the sun being the serpent as well, via the Ouroboros, a snake. Continuing on, the pagans displayed the cosmic god in their art as a bull standing on its hind legs with a tail, hooves, and horns, with a man's head and arms, with a three-pronged pitchfork in his hand. So the ancient cosmic symbol of the sun god with hooves, a tail, horns, and a pitchfork is where we today get our symbol for Satan, as having hooves, a tail, and horns with a pitchfork in his hands. Meaning what? The image that we see of Satan is really of the pagan sun gods of old. Continuing on, in pagan philosophy, lightning was the manifestation of their god's wrath and an agent of his punishment. The thunder was the voice of his warnings. In ancient Greece, thunder and lightning were believed by the worshippers of Zeus to be the manifestations of his presence. Any spot struck by lightning became sacred. The very name Zeus, the bright sky, identifies him as the god of the sky and its phenomena. In Rome, he was worshipped as Jupiter. In Scandinavia, Thor. In Canaan, Baal, the storm god. And for those of you brothers who don't know, in ancient Egypt, the god Amun, the hidden god, was also synonymous with Zeus. That's why when Alexander the Great conquered Egypt, he displayed his face with the ram's horn and named the image Amun Zeus, or Zeus Amun, because the gods Zeus and Amun are the same entity. That's how you're able to connect all these pagan gods together. They all go back to the same pagan worship, meaning what? The worship of the sun, whether it be the image of a serpent, of a bull, of a ram, of a goat. All of this just has to do with the image of this worship of the sun, and really the image of the worship of Adam and Eve, and by extension, Nimrod and Semiramis, because in the times they were in, post the flood, they're the ones who promoted the mysteries. Lightning from the sky separates into branches. Hence, the lightning bolt found in the hand of the supreme god of the sky was stylized into a pitchfork. This was a symbol for his power as he who controls the lightning bolt. Continuing on, besides Satan's personification, besides Satan's personation of Christ just before Christ's second coming, what other power of the Most High is the second beast of Revelations 13:11 through 17, going to counterfeit through lying wonders, as he doth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and this is still future. The prince of the power of the air is also the prince of darkness, just as the pagan was deceived by Satan in ancient times, so is the Christian in modern times. Well, there's a whole other side, but the Christian church in general, they don't understand that their entire religion is based on the worship of the serpent, right? The worship of the pagan gods of old, and that's been that way since the Council of Nicaea under Constantine. But continuing on, and if a man can learn how to bring electricity down from the sky and harness its energy, how much more could Satan, a supernatural being, who is even called in the Bible the prince of the power of the air? Again, that's more in reference to the god Beelzebub, which was known as basically Lord of the Flies, the Lord of the Air. Let me continue on. The prince of the power of the air, able to cause destructive storms, and not only this, but also give his followers secret knowledge in how to do the same to their enemies. Because the sun god was believed to have this power and would also give it to his followers if they were obedient, or would zap his enemies with his bolt, the pagans worship their gods through fear. In Bible truth, it is the goodness of the Most High that turns an evil person to worship him. But in pagan belief, it was the anger of the storm god, his hatred for man, his unmerciful attributes that made the pagans bow before him, not through love, but through fear. Their whole worship revolved around winning the evil one's favor by pacifying him through sacrifice and appeasement. And that is also true to a degree, but in reality, on a deeper level, the ruling powers that be understand that because the Most High hasn't given them the divine right to rule, the only way they can maintain rulership and power is through the left hand, through wickedness, through sacrifice, through a lot of these pagan uh, mysteries. Because again, the Most High it hasn't given them spiritual power or the divine right to rule. He's given that to the nation of Israel. So in order for all these other nations and rulers to maintain the power, they have to do these practices. Okay, so this real quick is just an image of a lightning bolt. As you can see, the way it kind of spreads off in branches, it kind of looks similar to a pitchfork. And again, that's why the image of the pitchfork was used to represent the image of lightning. Well, here now we're back to the image of Satan. As you can see, he has the pitchfork. See how it's kind of similarly shaped to the image of the bolt of lightning that we saw earlier. Now, this right here is an ancient depiction of the god, not Zeus, it's the god, why I feel so dumb. Neptune, that's his Roman name. The Greek name escapes me at the time. Poseidon, there we go, the god Poseidon. As you can see, at first the image it depicts him as a so-called man of color, but that's a different topic. But as you can see, he also has a trident in his hand. Now I know a lot of you might say, well, Poseidon was a god of water, not a god of the sky like Zeus. Well, in reality, Poseidon it was just a different aspect of Zeus. Both Zeus, or all three, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades all represent three different aspects of the same God. They're a trinity, if you would, per se. That the supreme being, the supreme God, rules the skies, the oceans, and the earth or the underworld. And here we go. We see an image of the god Zeus. As you can see, he has the lightning bolt in his hand, which honestly, in this image, if you kind of look at it, it kind of looks like a pillar or image of fire. For those of you brothers who watched the video that I did, uh, dealing with basically the concept of Lucifer and how they're the light bearer, you can see somewhat how this image of Zeus in his hand not only represents lightning, but also represents fire as well. So that's actually pretty interesting. Now, this right here is an image of the god Baal. I believe this one specifically is Baal Hadad. Now, if you look, you see he has the instrument or the mace in his hand, but in his left hand, excuse me, but in his right hand, he has a plume or some type of plant. But if you can see the way it branches out, it really represents lightning. So this is letting you know that the god Baal as well was a god of lightning, a god of storms. And I'm sure a lot of you brothers who've done the research know this as well. He was a god of fire, but he was also a sky god, a storm god. And that's really what the sky god represents. He represents the sun and lightning as well, because all of those come from the sky. The sun is in the sky, the lightning and clouds are in the sky. So it's just basically the concept of the god of fire also represents the god of the sky, or the god of the storms, because the sky reigns supreme over us all on the earth. And since I mentioned it earlier, this is the depiction of Alexander the Great as Amun Zeus, aka the combination of Zeus and the god Amun, because they were one and the same. This happened after he conquered the land of Egypt, since he viewed himself as a god, and he understood, or at least he believed, he was the descendant of Zeus, and he realized that Zeus and Amun, the ram god, were the same. Meaning what? Because Zeus is depicted as the image of the bull, and Amun the image of the ram. Meaning what? That the ram and the bull really represent the same thing, as well as the goat. Any god that has a horn on its head, whether it's a ram, a goat, an ox, a bull, all these things represent the same entity, because the horns represent power and enlightenment. But speaking of Zeus, let's get a little bit more information in him. Zeus is the sky and thunder god in ancient Greek religion, who rules as the king of the gods of Mount Olympus. His name is cognate with the first element of his Roman equivalent, Jupiter. His mythology and powers are similar, though not identical to those of Indo-European deities such as Jupiter, Rucanus, Perun, Indra, and Adias. That's because all these gods represent the same entity. For those of you brothers who read the scriptures and understand the Tower of Babel, how, at that point, the Most High confounded the language and scattered the people. That's what each of the people did. They took their own version of that original religion in Babylon and adapted it to form basically their own version of religion. That's why all these different philosophies you see today are similar in certain ends, but have certain differences, because it all comes from the same fountain, the same source, which is the mystery of iniquity. Zeus is the child of Cronos and Rhea, the youngest of his siblings to be born, though sometimes reckoned the eldest, as the others required disgorging from Cronos' stomach. In most traditions, he's married to Hera, and Hera, that's just another version of the mother goddess, whether it be Isis, Astarte, Rhea, Minerva, whatever you want to call her, Hebe, and Hephaestus. As the oracle of Dodona, his consort was said to be Dione, by whom the Iliad states that he fathered Aphrodite. And Aphrodite is a Venus, for those of you brothers who watched my series when it came to Lucifer. Zeus was also infamous for his erotic escapades. These resulted in many divine and heroic offsprings, including Athena, Apollo, Artemis, Hermes, Proserpina, Dionysus, Perseus, Hercules, Helen, Troy, Minos, and Muses. Meaning what? This is the concept of basically a god impregnating a woman so that that child could have a divine like properties. And that's actually in reality where the Christian church gets the concept of the Virgin Mary. Not saying that Christ was not divine and he didn't have a certain spirit upon him, but that spirit was from the Most High. But for him to take on physical flesh and blood, he had to become from the seed of the man. And that it tells you that in the scriptures as well. Continuing on, he was respected as an all-father who was chief of the gods and assigned roles to others. Even the gods who are not his natural children address him as father, and all the gods in his presence. He was equated with many foreign weather gods, permitting Pausanias to observe that Zeus is king in heaven. Is king in heaven is a saying common to all men. Zeus' symbols are the thunderbolt, the eagle, the bull, and the oak. In addition to his Indo-European inheritance, the classical cloud-gatherer also derives certain iconographic traits from the cultures of ancient Near East, such as the scepter. Zeus is frequently depicted by Greek artists in one of three poses: standing, striding forward with a thunderbolt, leveled in his right hand, or seated in his majesty. I mentioned Amon earlier. Let me just get some information on him. So this is Amon, or Amon, Amen. He was a major ancient Egyptian deity who appears as a member of the Hermopolitan Ogdad. Amon was attested from the Old Kingdom together with his wife Amunet. With the 11th dynasty, Amon rose to the position of the patron deity of Thebes by replacing Montu. So it's basically letting you know during that time period, Amon was the chief god, and Amon was basically the Egyptian version of the hidden god, meaning Amon was the Egyptian version of the god Saturn, or Kronos. But continuing on, after the rebellion of Thebes against the Hyksos with the ruler of Amhos, the sun god of Ra, excuse me, I'm going to repeat that again. After the rebellion of Thebes against the Hyksos and with the rule of Ahmose I, Amun acquired national importance expressed in his fusion with the sun god Ra as Amun Ra, meaning what? They understood that the sun god and the hidden god were really the same entity. But continuing on, Amun Ra retained chief importance in Egyptian pantheon throughout the New Kingdom. Amun Ra in this period held position as transcendental, self-created creator deity par excellence. He was the champion of the poor or troubled and central to personal piety. With Osiris, Amun-Ra is the most widely recognized of the Egyptian gods. That's because Osiris and Amun-Ra are the same entity. They're both the hidden god. But continuing on, as the chief deity of the Egyptian empire, Amun-Ra also came to be worshipped outside Egypt according to the testimony of ancient Greek hierographers in Libya and Nubia as Zeus Amun. He came to be identified with Zeus in Greece. So again, Zeus and Amun, the Egyptian god, were the same. And I'm pretty sure, don't y'all remember when I read the description of Zeus, how it said he was likened unto the image of the flail? You see, he kind of, or excuse me, not the flail, the image of the scepter. Why? Because he was compared with the god Amun, as you see the god Amun in his hand holding the scepter. This is really the Egyptian version of the god Zeus. Let me scroll down to get specific information. This is his identification with Min and Ra. With the army of the founder of the 18th dynasty expelled the Hyksos rulers from Egypt, the victor city of origin, Thebes, became the most important city in Egypt, the capital of a new dynasty. And by the way, the expulsion of the Hyksos, that would have been around the time where the Israelites were in captivity. So when it mentions in the Bible there was a Pharaoh who did not know the Israelites, that's because the pharaohs before who were friendly with the Israelite were of the Hyksos. And once they were expelled, the new ruling powers original, or actually the original rulers who were able to take back Egypt, had no regard for the Israelites because of that. But that's a whole other story. The local patron deity of Thebes, Amun, therefore became nationally important. The pharaohs of that new dynasty attributed all of their success to Amun, and they lavished much of their wealth and captured spoil on the construction of temples dedicated to Amun. The victory against the foreign rulers achieved by pharaohs who worship Amun caused him to be seen as a champion of the less fortunate, upholding the rights of justice for the poor. By aiding those who traveled in his name, he became the protector of the road, since he upheld Ma'at, which is truth, justice, and goodness. Those who prayed to Amun were required first to demonstrate that they were worthy by confessing their sins. While votive stele from the artist village at Adel Media records, Amun, who comes at the voice of the poor in distress, who gives breath to him who is wretched. You are Amun, the Lord of the silent, meaning he's a hidden god, a quiet god, who comes at the voice of the poor. When I called to you my distress, you came and rescued me. Though the servant was disposed to do evil, the Lord is disposed to forgive. The Lord of Thieves spends not a whole day in anger. His wrath passes in a moment, none remains. His breath comes back to us in mercy. May your king be kind. May you forgive. It shall not happen again. Okay, so I just wanted to go on a quick side and depict this image of Amun, or specifically Amun Ra, with the image of the ram. The reason why I'm going into this is for those you brothers who read the scriptures. Um, I believe it's in the book of Exodus. I can't quite remember the chapter, but it's whenever Moses descends onto Mount Sinai and the Israelites, worrying and thinking that Moses had passed away. They want a God created them of silver and gold and precious stones. And that God, which was specifically the Apis bull, was in reference to the God Amun. Because remember, like I said earlier, whether it's a ram, a bull, a goat, the image of the horns, it all represents the same deity. So that's the God they were worshiping. They were worshiping the God Amun, or Amun Ra, or Osiris, essentially. But yeah, back to this article. Subsequently, when Egypt conquered Cush, they identified the chief deity of the Cushites as Amun. This Cush deity was depicted as a ram-headed, more specifically a woolly ram with curved horns. Amun thus became associated with the ram arising from the aged appearance of the Cush ram, a deity, and depictions related to Amun sometimes had small ram's horns, known as the horns of Amun. A solar deity in the form of a ram can be traced to the pre-literate Kerma culture in Nubia, contemporary to the Old Kingdom of Egypt. The later Meroitic period name of the Nubian Amun was Amani, attested in numerous personal names such as Tanwetami, Arkamani, and Amitori. Since rams were considered a symbol of fertility, Ammon also became thought of as a fertility deity, and so started to absorb the identity of men, becoming Amen men. This association with fertility led to Amen men gaining the epithet Kumetif, meaning bull of his mother, in which he was found depicted on the walls of Karnak, phallic, and with a scourge as men was. So meaning what? Eventually, the god Amen, as Amen men, became recognized as the bull, which corroborates what I was saying earlier about the Israelites worshiping the image of the bull. And it's actually funny that his name means bull of his mother, because now that I think of it, for those of you brothers who read the scriptures and know a lot of the laws in the Old Testament, there was one law that mentions how you're not supposed to boil a baby goat in its mother's milk. And so that's kind of interesting. And now that I'm reading this article, it's made me to think it's something I might have to do on my own time. That it's possible that that's in reference to some type of ancient basically Kemetic practice where by boiling the kid in its mother's milk, you were showing reference to the god Amen men, or the bull of his mother. That's interesting. I'll figure that out on another day, though. As the cult of Ammon grew in importance, Ammon became identified with the chief deity who was worshipped in other areas during that period, namely the sun god Ra. This identification led to another merger of identities where Ammon became Amun Ra. In the hymn to Amun Ra, he is described as Lord of Truth, Father of Gods, Maker of men, Creator of all animals, Lord of things that are Creator of life. So first we'll start with this depiction. This is depicting Amun Ra. As you can see, he has the staff in his hand. He has the plume, but also the plume has the orb, which represents the sun. He has the Ankh. For those of you brothers who watched my series earlier about Lucifer, I mentioned how the Ankh represents life after death or rebirth. The circle, the vulva represent the giant vagina. The cross or the tau sign represents, crossing over from the spiritual to the physical realm. So you leave the physical realm, you go to the spiritual realm, and then you're reborn once again. That's what this image represents. This is Amen depicted as Amen men. Again, the reason why he has the erect phallus is because men was known as a fertility god. By the way, that image of the erect phallus is also where you get the image the obelisk for because this god was worshipped for his basically fertility. Now this one says Ra, Re Hecatory, or Ra, who is the Horus of the two horizons, the fusion of Ra and Horus in a depiction typical of the new kingdom. So what is letting you know, the god Ra, by extension, which is by extension Ptah by extension Amun, is the sun god Horus. And by the way, for you brothers who don't realize, the image of the orb around his head you see is of the sun, but you also see that serpent. Let me see if I can zoom in. That serpent right there, that serpent, that's what's called the Ouroboros snake, or basically the snake that's consuming its own tail. This is another way of understanding that the image of the serpent is also in reference to the sun, because the serpent, at least biblically, brought great enlightenment to the people. So again, the image of the serpent, the sun, and the image of the bull and the horn of the bull are all synonymous. Now this is the last one, depicting Ammon with the blue skin, because he was associated with the air and primeval creation. It also says Ammon was also depicted in a wide variety of other forms. So again, the blue skin represents not only him being a god of the sky, but also him being a quote unquote a black man or a blue man. But that's a whole other topic. But just to summarize real quick, when you see an ancient god depicted in either blue or green skin, it's because he was a so-called man of color, because the quote unquote black skin represented the man in his natural God-given form, because the ancients believed they had black skin due to being blessed by the sun. So their skin was a reflection of the properties of the earth. Therefore, blue for the ocean or the skies, and green for the earth. So when you ever see green or black skin, that's another way of showing you that deity was a deity of color. So this is the image that I used in a previous video, but I just wanted to bring it back again to make my point about basically how the sun, the serpent, and the horns are all synonymous. And literally this depicts it right here. As you can see, this is the god Isis. As you can see, she has the horns emitting from her head. Around the horns, you see the image of the globe, which is the sun. But sticking out of those horns is the image of the serpent. Why? Because the sun, the serpent, and the horns, whether it be from a bull, a ram, and a goat, they're all synonymous. They all mean the same thing, that being enlightenment. Right here, this is just an image of the zodiac. I'm not going to go over all the zodiac today, but the two I want to focus on are that of Aries and Taurus, two horned deities. Because again, I'm sure a lot of you brothers are aware of this, but the concept of the zodiac, it all goes back to worshiping the ancient Egyptian, Babylonian, as well as Kemetic gods. But we're going to prove that point. So first, we'll start with Aries, Latin, ram. In astronomy, zodiacal constellation in the northern sky lying between Pisces and Taurus at about 3 hours right ascension and 20 degrees north declination. Aries contains no very bright stars. The brightest star, Hamal, Arabic for sheep, has a magnitude of 2.0. The first point of Aries, or vernal equinox, is an intersection of the celestial equator with an apparent annual pathway of the sun and the point in the sky from which celestial longitude and right ascension are measured. The vernal equinox no longer lies in Aries but has moved into Pisces by precession of the equinoxes. In astrology, Aries is the first sign of the zodiac and considered as governing the period from about March 21st to about March 19th. Now, here's the key point right here. Its representation as a ram is identified with the Egyptian god Ammon, and in Greek mythology with the ram with the golden fleece on the back of Pherex, the son of King Athmas, safely fled Thessaly to Colchis, where he sacrificed the ram to Zeus, who placed it in the heavens as a consolation. The ram's golden fleece was recovered by Jason's leader Argonauts. Now again, see this image of the ram right here, how it represents the god Ammon, and I showed y'all brothers earlier the image of the god Ammon with the ram's head. And again, like I demonstrated earlier, the god Ammon and the god Zeus are the same entity, meaning the ram not only represents Ammon, but it also represents Zeus. Now here's Taurus. Taurus, or bull, in astronomy, zodiacal constellation lying in the northern sky between Aries and Gemini at about 4 hours and 20 minutes, right ascension, and 16 degrees north declination. The constellation's brightest star, Aldebaran, Arabic for the follower, also called Alpha Tauri, is the 14th brightest star in the sky with a magnitude of 0.85. Constellation also contains the Crab Nebula and the Pleiades and Hyades star clusters. In astrology, Taurus is the second sign of the zodiac, considered as governing that portion of the year from about April 20th to May 20th. Its representation as the bull is related to the Greek myth of Zeus, who assumed the form of a bull to abduct Europa. So, just showing you these two signs, what does this mean? This is something I'll expand on in a later time, but the whole concept of the zodiac is all in reference to the pagan mysteries, meaning what? The worship of Adam and Eve, as well as Nimrod and Semiramis. They were worshipped in many different ways, either the image of the serpent, the sun, or a horned entity. It can either be a ram, a bull, a goat. It doesn't matter. That just the fact that it has horns, because the horns represent the power, is showing you what it's meant to worship. Because again, I showed in this one, Taurus is a reference to Zeus, and the sign Aries is a reference to Ammon. But Ammon and Zeus are the same entity, meaning what? Meaning the bull and the ram are the same. All these different horned entities are the same, and this is the type of research you have to do to, get understanding and be able to connect all the different pagan gods together to realize they all come from the same source, that being the worship of the sun. Yeah, but with that being said, brothers, I'm going to close this video. Peace and blessings.